Hey everyone. So one of my recent videos on Public Freakouts Unleashed featured a pretty outrageous clip that didn't have a ton of available context at the time because nothing had come of it yet, and a lot of the times nothing ever comes of it, so I didn't know if this was going to pop off, but it did. I remember putting it in the episode at the time and thinking like, oh man, there's either something crazy about the customer that we're missing here, or these employees are in big trouble for this. As some of you may know, we've been keeping a running tally for the prestigious and highly sought-after official Airline of Public Freakouts Unleashed award, and Spirit and Frontier have remained somehow neck and neck for far too long, but I think this may finally settle this year-long debate once and for all. You may remember this video of a guy approaching the baggage check-in counter at the airport, only to be confronted by two extremely hostile and worked up employees who seemed almost excited by the prospect of ensuring that this man missed his flight. What we were missing here, though, was the why. Luckily, we have a huge update. But first, the video that started the madness.
And you think, you're going to check me in. I bet you we won't.
Okay? I paid for a ticket.
And you I paid for a ticket. For agent assistant, and you checked in 3 hours later. Hello.
So you'll notice real quick, here is where we get our only hint as to what may be causing this issue. This agent here mentions an agent assist fee of $25, which I've personally never heard of before, but more on that in a minute.
I just said that I
get on your flight.
Yeah, I just said that I would pay the $25.
And you thought you was going to get on your flight. And you thought you was going to get on your flight. And you thought you was going to get on your flight. And you thought you was going to get on your flight.
I literally paid for a ticket. I'm here 30 minutes. I'm here 30 minutes before my flight, and they're not letting me check in.
And you're not getting on your flight.
Because it's a policy. We don't control that.
And you will never fly.
You were about to let me check in. You were about to let me check in, and you decided that you ain't gonna let me check in.
Make me check you in.
You literally work for a company that I bought a plane ticket for. I'm here 30 minutes before the flight.
Can you please leave, sir?
No.
Can you please leave my personal space?
I'm not in your personal space. This is not your personal space. This is
my stationery.
This is not your personal space. You work for a company. This is not your personal space.
We ain't gotta worry about it. We ain't gotta worry about it.
You don't have to worry about it. You're literally not doing your job for a customer that has paid for a plane ticket to get home.
I told you to stop putting the camera on me, sir.
I'm literally here at Frontier. I bought a ticket and they are not letting me check in. For no reason whatsoever.
Well, you said you're never flying the airline again, so we might as well help you out and have you not fly the airline.
I've already bought a ticket. I've literally already bought a ticket, and this is your reaction.
Okay, that's insane, but what really happened here? Why were these employees so incensed and animated at this guy in the first place? What happened to them after this video went as insanely viral as it did? And just what the hell even is an agent assist fee? This all went down in the Raleigh, North Carolina airport as a 45-year-old married father of 3 who only granted the New York Post an interview on the condition of anonymity, so we don't know his name, but that's not particularly important, and you'll see why, was attempting to board his flight to Boston on Friday, May 2nd, after what I'm sure was a rather exhausting week-long business trip. So this guy just really wants to get home to his family, and to be fair here, he admits he arrived at the airport only 50 minutes before the flight left, which I find ill-advised in general. Gonna want at least 90 minutes in case something goes wrong is my general rule, but he was still well in advance of his plane actually departing. So our mysterious father of 3 approaches the baggage and self-service ticket kiosk, like the little electronic thing that doesn't have anybody at it, to get checked in and be on his way. And to his great surprise, he's told that because he missed the 60-minute pre-departure window, which requires that every passenger check in 60 or more minutes before their flight, he's told to go to the agent service counter for assistance. And here's where I'm a little torn, because it is true that this pre-check window is clearly displayed on the website, and it's also true that it wasn't even a requirement to be at the airport to check in, as Frontier allows mobile check-ins from your phone wherever you are as well. Additionally, this is apparently standard issue protocol now for several airlines. I didn't know that, but our anonymous main character did kind of mess up here by not doing his due diligence, But at the same time, I'm 30, and I have been flying different airlines most of my life, and I have personally never heard of these 60-minute pre-departure windows. So I did some research to get to the bottom of this, and as it turns out, this is a relatively new thing, with United Airlines joining several other major airlines who are also doing this just a day before the recording of this video on May 29th. And apparently this change is promising a smoother customer experience with better foot traffic flows in airports. Whether I actually buy that, I'm not sure. But across all of the other airlines, the check-in cutoff time for domestic flights is 45 minutes, part of an effort to create a uniform guidance across all of the different airlines. For Frontier, however, it's uniquely 60 minutes, and weirdly enough, on their website, they say that if you're late for that window, your ass is off the flight. Like, there's no special agent fee that says you can pay to get on still. It just says, sorry, you're not getting on. Your ticket's canceled. As it turns out, Frontier has a really outrageous and rather silly policy, in my opinion, about its agent-assisted kiosks. See, even if our protagonist wasn't late, if he had just wanted to use the agent-assisted kiosk for any reason, he has to pay the $25 fee. The employees didn't actually have to, in other words, let this guy check his bags late at all. They could have just turned him away. And in fact, several netizens have reported being turned away for failing to check in an hour early. So in a weird way, they were sort of almost trying to do him a favor by checking his bags, I guess, but they probably also just wanted to squeeze the $25 out of him and, whatever. He tells us that when he was told that, he disputed the fairness of the charge and says that's when things took a turn for the worse. They all kind of start chiming in, well, you should have checked the website. Sorry, it's on you, according to him. This is his quote, by the way. And they went back and forth on this for 20 minutes, apparently, because he finally relented and agreed to pay the fee. He admits that when he was reaching for his wallet to do so, he muttered, "I'm never flying this shitty airline again," causing the woman he had been talking to this whole time to take a full step backward and audibly gasp, as though she'd never heard the dreaded S word in her life. He tells us that she then said, "How dare you curse at me? I'm not checking you in. I don't have to check you in." And he says he responded pretty forcefully himself, saying, "You will check me in." It sounds like this 20-minute back and forth beforehand had built up a lot of hostility between the customer and this employee, and she was getting ready to grasp at straws to deny him after getting him to agree to pay the fee after like 20 minutes. That's a really long time to argue with someone at a customer service kiosk of really any variety. So they're both being pretty escalatory and hostile at this point, and then he says she, quote, just went, I don't know if ballistic is the right word, but she essentially cut off completely and absolutely refused to check me in. This obviously caused a super heated debate in the comments about whether this guy was at fault for being unaware of the check-in rules, which, let's be honest, they make it pretty easy to follow, but also don't super clearly communicate that the rule exists in the first place or is different than the other ones, or if the employees were at fault for acting, let's also be honest, extremely unprofessional and catty here. Our protagonist told the Post, "What was remarkable to me also was that not one person on their side took the professional route or the high road. Listen," he said, "it's my money at the end of the day, and when somebody is caught off guard with a charge that they feel is in some way unfair and unreasonable, of course they have the right to express themselves. It's not okay to be disrespectful of somebody for no reason, but I was not being disrespectful to them personally, in my opinion. I thought that they were being disrespectful to me out of the gate because I was complaining about a fee that I was completely caught off guard by." Apparently, this tomfoolery continued until he threatened to call the cops over, and they then took it upon themselves to call the airport police over to the desk. He tells us at this point that he had a very, very professional conversation with the two officers who were there and were completely empathetic. They seemed to 100% agree with where I was coming from. I asked them off the record, essentially, am I being ridiculous here? And they both, with serious expressions, sympathetic expressions, shook their heads and said, no, we see this sort of disagreement with this airline frequently, and this is probably not going to be the last one. He continued, I'm sure I'm not the first person to have complained about the fee. I'm also 100% sure that I wasn't complaining in as extreme a way as other people have. And boy, ain't that the truth, right? We've seen a heck of a lot worse than a guy muttering, essentially, this airline sucks under his breath and being salty about a surprise fee. So what happened? What became of all of this once the dust had settled? Well, after failing to be able to get on his Frontier flight after all of this, he paid another $500 for a JetBlue ticket, which he does say, to Frontier's credit, they reimbursed him for after he called and explained this whole melodrama. They also apparently reimbursed him for the original flight he missed, so in the end, he was reimbursed for everything. It wasn't like a super massive financial inconvenience for him long term. As for our Frontier airline Karens, Newsweek got in touch with Frontier to inquire about the fate of the employees, and were told, we are aware of what occurred and have been directly in touch with the customer. The individuals in question, who work for a third-party contractor, are no longer associated with the Frontier account. In other words, the Frontier baggage kiosk employee Karens were fired from their job. Or I guess technically they were fired from the Frontier account, but the actual company they work for, well, let's be real, they probably fired them too. But did they deserve that? Do you believe their conduct was unprofessional enough, their attitudes bad enough to warrant a full termination? Or was that a step too far from Frontier? Did this man have a right to be angry? Was he righteously indignant about this silly surprise fee? Or do you think what he said went too far? Did those cops really fully 100% agree with him and vindicate everything he said? Is everyone in this situation wrong? As always, I welcome your thoughts, feelings, concerns in the comments below, and we'll need at least one really solid contrarian take. Okay, that is it for me, guys. I'm going to skedaddle. See ya!